last week on Legally Kidnapped.
Good evening. Our top story this week. A 14-year-old teenager from Texas wins a restraining order against the child protective industry after CPS agents take the kid away for a year and a half over a simple misunderstanding. In Texas, Governor Rick Perry defends the state's dismal treatment of foster kids. In Arizona this week, the governor is concerned over backlogs and investigations of abuse and neglect. In California, child advocates are celebrating an agreement that will provide intensive in-home and community-based mental health care for children in or at risk of entering the foster care system. In Colorado, the child protective industry doesn't have enough foster homes for all the kids they've been stealing. And in Washington, D.C., a study finds that dozens of children were needlessly snatched in the paranoid fallout of the Benita Jax tragedy, where the kids were found dead months after being murdered by their mother. Florida continues the practice of drugging kids in juvenile detention facilities with adult doses of antipsychotics, creating a tranquilizing effect in an effort to reduce the cost of prison guards. A new study from the Center of Disease Control finds that a majority of Americans had troubled childhoods. And the state of Georgia would rather spend millions fighting the parents of special needs children in court instead of providing for special education services for the children. In Illinois, a judge decides against Catholic charities and allows the state to cancel all of their foster care and adoption contracts due to the agency's refusal to sell and house your children with gays. Illinois reaches a deal with Mexico over how to treat the children of illegal immigrants who are stolen or under the watchful eye of the child protective industry. In Nebraska, the state's child welfare reform via privatization scheme breaks down after 3 companies that provide foster care back out of their contracts with the state, while child welfare cases are backing up. In Nebraska's lawmakers are once again looking to change the system. In China this week, authorities in Beijing are denying reports that babies were stolen from parents who violated the country's one-child policy and sold for adoption overseas. Amnesty International chews out Ireland over their poor treatment of innocent children in state and church-run institutions. Israel is violating international child protection laws by locking up unaccompanied refugee kids. Sweden changes its mind and pays off thousands of Swedes who were mistreated in foster care back in the 1900s. And New Zealand celebrates 30 years of destroying families in the family court. In Australia this week, a Senate panel looks into forced adoptions back in the 1960s and 70s. A Senate inquiry is told that the adoption levels could return to the 1960s if they don't start supporting single mothers. And the Australian Medical Association is worried about an alarming rash of suicide among child detainees in immigration camps. In Canada, a foster mother is suing the child protective industry after contracting hepatitis C from a foster kid. British Columbia's child advocate probes the death of a 5-year-old foster kid who fell off a bridge. And a lawyer is approved for a former foster parent of the year who molested boys in his care. In England this week, a record number of kids are still being taken into foster care in the wake of the Baby P tragedy, while the child protective industry could only manage to adopt out 60 of these kids in the whole country last year. In entertainment news this week, Kelsey Grammer gets a visitation with his kids, and it is stipulated that they must attend all of their scheduled activities. Director Roman Polanski apologizes for drugging and raping a 13-year-old girl 34 years ago. The marriage of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Maria Shriver is terminated after he was caught with a secret love child from one of the housekeepers. And Kate Gosselin gets caught on camera while yelling at her kids when she picked them up from school. In California, a social worker from Long Beach has her license revoked after being accused of felony child abuse and the beating death of her 31-day-old baby. A preliminary hearing is delayed for a foster dad who killed the little one in his care, and due to the delay, the murderer is granted bail. A North Carolina foster parent is accused of having sexual relations with a child under 13 in his care. In Wisconsin, a 16-year-old foster kid is charged with setting fire to his foster parent's house. A Pennsylvania foster mother goes to trial for driving under the influence with 5 foster children in the car. A Pennsylvania prison guard is charged with sexually abusing incarcerated child molesters. And in Ohio, a couple of foster parents get drunk and leave a kid behind at a Cleveland Browns game. In Maine this week, the National Model Child Protective Industry fails to comply with the legal mandates for kinship placement regarding a 9-year-old boy by refusing to give him to his grandparents. The original adoptive parents are still fighting to regain custody of the kid who is now 12 and has been adopted out by an out-of-state couple while preparing to sue the child protective industry at the same time. In Michigan this week, a judge orders the daughter of Mary Ann Godbaldo to return to her mother after she was accused of shooting at police when they tried to help CPS agents snatch her child over her refusal to give the kid powerful psychotropic medications, saying that drugging kids is the decision of the parents and not the state. In Connecticut, 37 child snatchers who were laid off are rallying to get their jobs back. In Missouri, 2 men filed a joint lawsuit saying that the child protective industry didn't do enough to stop the sexual abuse they suffered while at the former St. Joseph's Boys Home in the 1990s. And a Nebraska father who is serving in Afghanistan says that his daughter belongs with him and not in foster care. In New York this week, lawyers are trying to get police files on a boy who went missing from a foster home so they can continue the search, which the police have already given up on. 8 kids who were rescued from a New York foster home are recaptured in Pennsylvania. The real parents are awaiting extradition to New York, and the kids are back with their foster parents. And they're doing nothing about the parents' claims that the kids were being abused in foster care. In Pennsylvania, a second man is sent to prison for 15 months for the burning a cross on a front lawn of a white family who took in a black child. And finally, tonight, CPS agents in Texas snatch a kid from a grandmother due to her cigarette smoking habit. For these stories and all the latest dirt on the child protective industry, visit www.legallykidnapped.com. And until next week, this is Baby LK. Over and out.